The calm of Amberwood had been shattered, and no one was prepared for what would come next. For years, the Benson family was the embodiment of suburban normalcy, until their world was turned upside down by the unexplained disappearance of Ella Benson. At first glance, it seemed like another case of a rebellious young woman disappearing, seeking freedom from her family's grasp. But in the dark corners of the investigation, a far more disturbing story was waiting to be uncovered. Alex, her older brother, was a man with everything to lose. He had the charm, the wealth, and the perfect public image. He seemed to have it all. But beneath that polished exterior, something had been festering for years, a dark secret that would change everything. When Ella vanished, the suspicion immediately fell on Alex. But his calm demeanor in the face of his sister's disappearance was strange. Too strange. As the investigation dragged on, the town's suspicions grew, and whispers of a hidden truth began to spread. The more the authorities dug into Alex's life, the more they realized he wasn't just a grieving brother, he was a man with a history, and that history was about to be laid bare. What had Alex been hiding? Why had Ella suddenly vanished without a trace? And what had she discovered before her final moments that would expose her brother's darkest secrets? The truth was out there, buried in Alex's past, and it would take a relentless search to bring it to light. But when the pieces finally came together, the revelation would leave the entire town of Amberwood in shock. Thank you my viewers and my subscribers. If you are new here, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our new videos. Alex Benson was born in Amberwood, a quaint town that seemed to exist solely to produce perfect families, except for the ones with secrets. He grew up in a house that overlooked the sleepy town, with rolling hills that seemed to never end. His father, a local businessman, had always been the proud patriarch, and his mother, a homemaker, dedicated her life to ensuring that their family was the epitome of traditional values. Alex, the firstborn, was their pride and joy. From a young age, it was clear he was destined for greatness. He was always the golden child, handsome, charismatic, and academically gifted. At school, he excelled in everything from sports to academics, and by the time he entered college, his future was already mapped out. Alex earned a degree in computer science from a prestigious university, a fact that made his parents beam with pride. After graduation, he secured a high-paying job at a local tech firm, and his upward trajectory seemed unstoppable. But while his career flourished, something within Alex started to shift. He became increasingly distant from his family, especially his younger sister, Ella. At first, his family attributed it to the pressures of his job, but over the years, his behavior became harder to ignore. His relationship with Ella, which had once been inseparable, began to fray. What had once been shared laughter and late-night talks turned into tense silences and secretive behavior. He spent more time away from home, disappearing for days on end with vague excuses. It was as though the more success he achieved, the more his life unraveled. Despite the cracks in his personal life, Alex maintained his image in public. He was the charming, well-manicured tech genius who had it all: money, respect, and an enviable career. But behind closed doors, Alex was hiding a far more sinister side to himself. Over the years, he'd become entangled with a dangerous underground network, one that made him feel powerful and untouchable. And as much as he tried to keep it hidden, the weight of the lies and the guilt began to take its toll. Alex's transformation into a person his family no longer recognized wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a gradual, insidious shift. A change that no one but Alex himself truly understood. But when Ella went missing, it became clear that whatever Alex had been hiding was much more than anyone had imagined. Ella Benson was everything her brother was not. While Alex was polished and composed, Ella was the free spirit who danced to her own beat. Born 2 years after Alex, Ella always lived in her brother's shadow. She was the quiet artist, constantly seeking her own truth in the world, with a passion for painting and sculpture that set her apart. Where Alex fit into the mold of a perfect child, Ella reveled in defying expectations. Her early years were marked by a deep connection with Alex. They shared a bond that transcended the ordinary sibling relationship. Late-night talks, secret plans, and adventures were their thing. But somewhere along the way, things began to change. Alex's increasing distance from the family made Ella question what was going on. His secretive nature had begun to surface when she was in her late 20s. He no longer trusted her the way he once had. He became more controlling, more manipulative, and she couldn't put her finger on why. Was it a simple sibling rivalry, or was there something deeper, something darker? Ella had always been the wild one, never one to adhere to social norms or the expectations of her parents. She traveled often, never staying in one place for long. Art was her escape, a means of expressing the chaos she felt within. Her friends often described her as a beautiful soul, one who could see the world in a way others couldn't, but even they began to notice how she'd become more withdrawn and anxious. There were moments when she would talk about Alex, her brother, with frustration. He seemed to have control over her in a way that was difficult to explain, and she often found herself questioning whether he was right about things or if she was just imagining them. As the years passed, Ella started to pull away from her family, especially Alex. But despite the growing tension, she never suspected that the man she had always trusted, the brother she had loved, could be capable of something so horrifying. That was, until the night she disappeared. Hannah, Ella's closest friend, had been by her side for years. She was one of the few people who had witnessed the tension between Alex and Ella firsthand. Hannah had been the one Ella confided in when things began to feel off with her brother. She was the one who heard the whispers about Alex's strange behavior, and though she tried to brush them off, a seed of doubt was planted. Hannah's unease would grow after Ella's disappearance, and she would be the first to question whether Alex knew more than he was letting on. Detective Sarah Mitchell was the lead investigator in the case. She had seen it all, missing persons, family disputes, and hidden motives, but something about this case felt different. There was something off about Alex, something that didn't sit right with her. Her instinct told her that the key to solving the case lay not in the physical evidence, but in understanding the complex relationship between the siblings. Sarah would later be the one to connect the dots, revealing a chilling truth that no one had expected. Amberwood was a town that seemed to belong to another era, quiet, idyllic, and tucked away between vast forests and rolling hills. The town's charm was in its simplicity, tree-lined streets, old brick houses with flower boxes, and a sense of security that only small towns can offer. The Benson family had lived in Amberwood for as long as anyone could remember, their home a grand house on a hill that overlooked the town's peaceful main street. From the outside, it seemed perfect, a classic two-story house with white shutters, a wraparound porch, and a well-maintained garden. But there was an unease that lingered in the air, a subtle undercurrent that no one dared to speak of. From the moment Ella went missing, Amberwood was thrust into a frenzy of rumors and speculations. The local police department, led by Detective Sarah Mitchell, was small but competent. Yet, as the investigation unfolded, even the most seasoned officers felt a creeping doubt, a sense that something wasn't adding up. There were too many unanswered questions and too many inconsistencies in the Benson family's story. The first sign that all was not right came when Alex, Ella's older brother, became uncharacteristically distant. He was the first to report Ella missing, but the way he acted during the initial stages of the investigation raised eyebrows. While most families would be frantic, Alex was calm, almost too calm. He maintained a controlled demeanor, but there was something about his eyes, a flicker of discomfort, that no one could ignore. The police, though wary, had no concrete evidence to suggest foul play. After all, Ella had a history of running off, her free-spirited nature leading her to take off on impulsive trips without informing anyone. But this time felt different. Ella's disappearance wasn't just another one of her disappearances. Her friends, particularly Hannah, knew that Ella would never just vanish without warning. Her work, her art, everything had been left behind, untouched. There was no sign of a struggle at the house, no indication that she had planned to leave. The only clue was a cryptic text message she had sent to Hannah the night before. It read, "I'm scared. He's not who I thought he was." The tension was palpable in the air as days turned into weeks. While the search for Ella continued, Amberwood seemed to hold its breath. At the local tech firm where Alex worked, his co-workers spoke of his sudden withdrawal from social activities. He wasn't his usual charming self, his interactions were more guarded, his smiles less genuine. But Alex, the perfect employee, continued to show up for work, his life seemingly unaffected by his sister's mysterious disappearance. The silence in the Benson home was deafening. Alex's parents, once so full of life, appeared to retreat into themselves. They no longer spoke to their son the way they once had, their concern for their daughter growing each day. It was as if the entire family had been swallowed by a dark cloud, and no one knew how to escape it. In Amberwood, everything was too still. The familiar streets, the same houses, the same faces, everything remained the same. But beneath the surface, something was shifting. Something was wrong, and no one knew yet just how deeply it ran. It was a quiet evening in Amberwood when everything changed. The sun had already dipped behind the horizon, leaving the sky a soft hue of purples and oranges. The Benson house, usually filled with the sounds of family chatter, was eerily silent. Inside, Alex sat alone in the living room, the dim light from a single lamp casting long shadows on the walls. His parents were in their respective rooms, retreating from the weight of the investigation. Ella, who had always been the heart of the family, was missing, gone without a trace. But tonight, it was different. There was a palpable tension in the air, as if something was about to snap. Ella's disappearance had cast a long shadow over the Benson family, but it was the night before that had set the stage for what was to come. Earlier that day, Ella had arrived at the Benson house unannounced. She had left a few days earlier, not telling anyone where she was going, but now she was back. Her eyes were different, darker, more guarded. There was something about her demeanor that made Alex uneasy. She was back home to retrieve some personal items, she told him, and she had planned to leave again the next morning. Her words were measured, but the way she looked at him spoke volumes. There was fear in her eyes, and for the first time, Alex felt like he had lost control of her. The argument started quietly, just a few sharp words between the siblings. Alex tried to stay calm, but there was an undercurrent of frustration building inside him. Ella had changed. She had stopped trusting him, stopped believing in the version of the world he had carefully constructed for her. And now, she was questioning everything. Her return wasn't about reconciling, it was about uncovering the truth. Ella was starting to understand that Alex had been hiding something. Something she couldn't quite pinpoint, but something that felt wrong. "I'm not leaving until I know what's going on, Alex," she said, her voice trembling, but her resolve firm. Alex's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to this. She had always been the one who depended on him, the one who believed his every word. But now she was challenging him. She was unraveling everything he had worked so hard to protect. "You don't understand," Alex said, his voice barely a whisper. "You never did." His words hung in the air like a thick fog. "I've been protecting you, Ella. From everything." Ella took a step back, as if the weight of his words hit her harder than she expected. For a brief moment, she seemed uncertain, confused even. But the realization was starting to sink in. She had spent too long in his shadow, too long trusting a man who now seemed so foreign to her. Alex reached for his phone, but Ella's eyes never left him. "Who are you really, Alex?" she asked softly. "I want to know everything. No more lies. You've been hiding things from me for years." Her voice quivered, but there was a steel edge to it now. The words were out, and she wasn't going to back down. She wasn't the little sister anymore, she was a woman who had seen through the carefully constructed facade her brother had built. For a second, Alex hesitated. He looked at her, his face a mixture of anger and something else, fear. Guilt. But he couldn't let her see that. He couldn't let her get the upper hand. The atmosphere in the room shifted. The tension between them thickened, and for a brief moment, it was as if time stood still. Then, in an instant, everything changed. Ella had taken a step forward, her face a mix of defiance and desperation. She had crossed a line, one Alex had kept her from crossing for years. Her actions weren't just questioning him anymore, they were threatening the world he had so carefully controlled. And in that moment, something in Alex snapped. The argument escalated quickly. Words turned into shoves, and what started as a verbal confrontation now became a physical one. Alex, in his fury, grabbed Ella's arm, his grip tightening around her wrist. "Stop, Alex, you're hurting me." Ella cried out, her voice panicked. Her body trembled as she tried to pull away from him, but Alex's grip only tightened. His face was contorted with anger, his eyes wild, as if he were struggling to contain something inside him, a darkness he had long buried. In his rage, Alex shoved Ella against the wall, the impact causing a picture frame to crash to the floor. The sound echoed through the empty house. Ella stumbled, trying to regain her balance, but her breath came in short gasps. "Get away from me," she screamed, but Alex was no longer listening. His mind had become consumed by the rage he had long kept under control. Ella was no longer his sister, she was the threat to everything he had built. With one final shove, Ella fell to the ground, her head hitting the hardwood floor with a sickening thud. Alex stood there, panting, watching as she lay motionless. The room was silent except for the beating of his heart in his ears. For a long moment, Alex didn't move. His eyes locked onto his sister, and something cold settled in his chest. He had gone too far. But it wasn't too late. He could still cover it up. He could still make her disappearance look like an accident. In a daze, Alex moved to the kitchen and grabbed a towel. His hands were shaking as he wiped away the blood from her forehead. The world outside the house continued to spin, unaware of the violence that had just occurred behind the Benson family's closed doors. Alex stepped back, looking down at the still body of his sister. A moment ago, she had been so full of life, challenging him. And now, she was gone. The morning after Ella's disappearance, the town of Amberwood was quiet, as though it too was holding its breath. The news had spread quickly, the free-spirited artist, Ella Benson, was missing. For the town's residents, the shock was palpable. After all, Amberwood was the kind of place where nothing ever went wrong. But as the hours passed, and the hours turned to days, the painful reality began to sink in. Ella hadn't just wandered off. Something had happened, and the clock was ticking. The investigation began immediately. Amberwood's police department, though competent, was a small unit that typically dealt with minor incidents. A missing person case in a town like Amberwood wasn't entirely unusual, but Ella's case felt different. Detective Sarah Mitchell, a seasoned investigator with years of experience, was assigned to lead the case. Her calm demeanor and sharp instincts had made her one of the best in the department, but this case troubled her from the start. Something about it didn't sit right, and that nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Detective Mitchell, along with a small team of officers, began by combing through the Benson house. The family was in shock, unable to fully comprehend what had transpired. Alex, despite his apparent calm, was visibly shaken. His answers to the questions from the officers were concise, but there was something about his responses that felt rehearsed, like he had said these words before, over and over, to himself. "We had a fight, but it was nothing serious," Alex explained, his voice steady. "Ella was upset, but she's always been like that. She just left. She does this sometimes." The detective didn't miss the tremor in his voice when he spoke about Ella's anger. It wasn't just the typical sibling quarrel Alex was painting it to be. But the investigation had to start somewhere. The officers searched the house top to bottom, from the attic where old family memories were stored to the garage where tools and old boxes lay in disarray. Nothing appeared out of place. No signs of forced entry. No struggle. It was as if Ella had simply walked out of her own life. Meanwhile, Alex's parents were barely able to hold it together. His mother, once a vibrant woman full of life, now sat in a chair by the window, staring out into the quiet town with vacant eyes. His father, who had been distant in recent years, was pacing back and forth, muttering about how this couldn't be happening. Despite their grief, Alex's parents made repeated requests for the police to search the surrounding woods and fields where Ella might have wandered off. But Detective Mitchell didn't believe Ella had simply run away. Something was off, and she couldn't shake the feeling that Alex knew more than he was letting on. 2 days into the investigation, a breakthrough came in the form of a missing object. A small, hand-painted journal, one of Ella's personal belongings, had vanished. The journal, a collection of sketches, musings, and reflections on her troubled relationship with her brother, was last seen on her desk, untouched. The journal's absence seemed like a clue, but it wasn't clear what it meant yet. Ella had been known to carry the journal with her during her travels, but it was a curious item to have disappeared. Could it have been taken during the struggle? Or was it something that Ella had taken with her as a form of evidence, proof of the control Alex had over her? Along with the journal, another discovery raised alarms. A series of text messages, sent from Ella's phone the night before she vanished, were found to contain a cryptic message: "I'm scared. He's not who I thought he was." The words, haunting and simple, were chilling in their implications. Who was she referring to? Had Ella finally realized the truth about her brother? Detective Mitchell immediately ordered a full forensic analysis of Ella's phone records, hoping to uncover any additional clues. As the team combed through the data, one of the most surprising pieces of evidence came to light: a string of phone calls and text messages between Alex and an unknown number. The number wasn't listed in Ella's contacts, but the conversation log suggested a strained relationship between the two, arguments over unmentioned issues, cryptic phrases that didn't quite make sense. It was a trail that seemed to connect Alex to the disappearance, but nothing concrete could be proven. Yet, the investigation soon became a labyrinth of confusion, filled with false leads and dead ends. In the early days, there was a theory that Ella had simply fled Amberwood to escape her family and the tension at home. One of her friends, a local artist named Grace, claimed that Ella had confided in her a week before her disappearance, saying she was thinking about leaving it all behind. Grace's statement sent the search in a different direction, and for a brief moment, hope flickered. Could Ella have decided to start over somewhere far away? But as the search continued, the idea that Ella had voluntarily left the town started to feel more and more unlikely. Grace later admitted to Detective Mitchell that her conversation with Ella had been taken out of context. Ella had been venting her frustration, but there was no indication she was planning to disappear. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing hour, the possibility of Ella's voluntary departure seemed more and more improbable. The evidence was stacking up, but nothing could definitively point to Alex's involvement. There were whispers from the townspeople, rumors about the Benson family's troubles, but nothing that could be tied directly to Ella's disappearance. The toll on Alex's family was becoming unbearable. His parents, desperate for answers, started to turn on each other. His mother, unable to cope with the lack of progress, blamed his father for not doing enough to find Ella. His father, in turn, became angry at Alex, wondering why his son was so detached from the situation. But just when it seemed like the investigation would stall indefinitely, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source: an anonymous tip. Someone had seen Alex in the woods the night of Ella's disappearance, just hours after the argument between the siblings. The witness didn't know exactly what Alex had been doing there, but they had seen his car parked near the edge of the forest. The tip was enough to raise suspicions, and Detective Mitchell knew this could be the key to unlocking the mystery. Alex was brought in for questioning again, his story now more scrutinized than ever. The emotional toll of the investigation was clearly taking its toll on him. His usual charm was gone, replaced by the defensive posture of a man trying to keep his world from crumbling. As the pieces of the puzzle slowly began to fall into place, the chilling truth seemed to loom ever closer. Days passed, each one heavier than the last, as the investigation ground to a halt. Alex's calm facade began to crack, and even his most loyal friends started to look at him with suspicion. His story about his sister's disappearance, once so consistent, now seemed riddled with holes. Detective Mitchell was certain Alex was hiding something far more sinister than he was willing to admit, but she still lacked the hard evidence to back it up. Then, just when the case seemed poised to spiral into oblivion, a call came that would forever change the course of the investigation. It was a routine follow-up on one of the missing items from the Benson household, Ella's journal. The journal had never been found, and it had become a central piece in the investigation. Detective Mitchell had arranged for a second search of the nearby woods, hoping that someone might have stumbled across it. She wasn't expecting much, but she knew it was worth a shot. As the search team combed through the underbrush, one of the officers called her over. There, half buried in a pile of fallen leaves, was a weathered, leather-bound journal. It wasn't just any journal. This was Ella's. With trembling hands, Mitchell flipped it open. The pages were filled with sketches, musings, and notes that seemed like the kind of personal reflections anyone might expect from an artist. But as she reached the last few pages, a chilling discovery sent a cold shiver down her spine. There, in Ella's handwriting, was a detailed account of her growing fears. The last entry read, "He's planning something, and I don't know if I can stop him. I think he's involved in something bigger than I realized. I'm not safe here. I have to leave, but I'm scared of what he might do." The words hung in the air, echoing like a warning. But what really made Mitchell's blood run cold were the following words, written in frantic scrawl. "I know what you've been hiding, Alex. I'll expose you if it's the last thing I do." It hit Detective Mitchell like a punch to the gut. Ella hadn't run away. She hadn't simply left. Ella had been trying to escape from her brother, from the very person who had seemed to care for her the most. And what was worse, it seemed that Ella had uncovered something so damaging, something so terrifying about Alex, that she felt the need to leave everything behind to protect herself. The journal revealed a different Alex, a man she had been too blinded to see. Alex, the brother who had seemed so perfect, had a dark side, a side that Ella had, at last, begun to uncover. The real horror was that Alex had been hiding something much worse than anyone had anticipated. Mitchell's mind raced as she processed the implications. Ella had been on the brink of exposing Alex. She had uncovered his involvement in something that went beyond family drama. But what exactly had she discovered? Had she learned of his connections to the criminal network he'd been involved in? Had she uncovered something even more dangerous? As the investigation continued to spiral inward, another unexpected lead emerged. A forensic analysis of Alex's phone records had revealed that on the night of Ella's disappearance, he had received a strange phone call, a call from a number that had been previously deleted from his contact list. The number didn't belong to anyone in Amberwood, and it didn't match any of his known associates. Mitchell tracked the number to an obscure location just outside of town. The address was a rundown warehouse on the outskirts, a place that had long been abandoned. But when Mitchell and her team arrived at the scene, they found something that would forever change the course of the investigation. Hidden in the back of the warehouse, tucked behind crates of old, dusty materials, were files, loads of them. Documents that contained details of criminal activities, shady transactions, and names of people Alex had been connected to. But there was one document, buried deeper than the rest, that stopped Mitchell in her tracks. It was a contract, signed by Alex himself, detailing a large sum of money in exchange for illegal services rendered to a nameless criminal organization. The document was dated just days before Ella's disappearance. The weight of this new evidence hit Detective Mitchell hard. Ella had been right. Alex had been hiding something much darker than anyone had imagined, and now, the realization of his betrayal was undeniable. Mitchell had spent weeks following false leads, all while the true horror of the situation had remained buried beneath layers of deceit. She had trusted Alex, like everyone else, to be innocent until proven guilty. But this discovery, this damning evidence, revealed a different reality. Alex had not only manipulated his sister, but he had used her trust for his own gain. He had been pulling the strings from the shadows, and Ella had been the only one brave enough to confront him. Mitchell stood in the warehouse, staring at the contract in her hands. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but one thing still didn't make sense. Why had Alex gone to such lengths to control Ella? Why had he chosen to silence her instead of just letting her leave? Was it only the criminal network he feared being exposed, or was there something even more personal, something about their sibling relationship, that had pushed him over the edge? As the investigation shifted into its final stages, one thing became certain. The truth about Alex's secret life had come to light, and no one would be able to turn a blind eye to it anymore. The courtroom was packed with a mixture of townspeople, reporters, and curious onlookers, all waiting for the trial of Alex Benson to begin. The once charming older brother, the successful tech mogul, now stood accused of his sister's disappearance and murder. The facade of the perfect family had been shattered, leaving behind a trail of broken relationships and shattered trust. For Alex's parents, the trial had become a painful reckoning, a collision between the son they thought they knew and the man who had orchestrated their daughter's disappearance. His mother, barely able to look at him during the proceedings, had retreated further into her grief. His father, once a stoic figure of strength, had crumbled under the weight of the truth. They had loved him, trusted him, and believed in him, only to discover that their son had lived a double life. There were no words to ease the devastation they felt, and the once loving family was now fractured beyond repair. Detective Sarah Mitchell had followed the case from beginning to end, and as the trial reached its final days, she found herself reflecting on everything that had transpired. She had gone from suspecting Alex to uncovering a trail of deception and betrayal so deep that it nearly consumed the entire town. In her years as an investigator, she had seen her share of dark secrets, but nothing had prepared her for the calculated manipulation Alex had orchestrated. Ella had been right to try to escape, she had seen through the lies long before anyone else. But despite the clarity of the evidence and the shocking revelations, there remained a lingering question that haunted Mitchell: why? What had driven Alex to such extremes? Was it the pressure of his criminal ties? The fear of exposure? Or was there something more personal, a deeper, darker secret between him and Ella that had never come to light? As the gavel struck, sealing Alex's fate, a mixture of relief and sorrow filled the courtroom. Justice had been served, but at what cost? Ella's life had been brutally stolen, and the lives of those who loved her were left in tatters. The investigation had uncovered a web of lies and manipulation, but it had not erased the emotional scars left behind. As Alex was led away in handcuffs, the town of Amberwood slowly began to heal. There was no going back to the way things had been. The Benson family would never be the same. But for Detective Mitchell, there was no sense of closure, just the heavy weight of knowing how deep the darkness had run, how much she had missed along the way. The case was solved, but the emotional toll lingered. For the friends and family who had loved Ella, there was no easy path forward. Her closest friend, Hannah, found solace in keeping Ella's memory alive through her art. She started a small foundation in Ella's honor, helping other young women who had suffered in silence, much like Ella had. The foundation wasn't a cure for the pain, but it was a step in the right direction, a way to bring something positive from the tragedy. As for Detective Mitchell, the case had left her with a bitter sense of justice. She knew that some answers would never come. Some wounds would never heal. But she also understood the value of exposing the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Alex had wanted to control the narrative, to manipulate his sister and those around him into believing the story he told. In the end, it was the truth that prevailed, the truth that had been hidden beneath layers of lies and deceit. And while it was too late for Ella, the truth would stand as a testament to the strength she had shown in the face of her brother's manipulation. The case was closed, but the scars would remain. Amberwood would move on, but the lessons learned from the tragic story of Alex and Ella Benson would echo for years to come. Thank you for watching this heartbreaking story of betrayal and deception. If you found this case as chilling as we did, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more gripping true crime content. We appreciate your support, it keeps us bringing these stories to light. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on this case, and let us know where you're watching from. Your engagement helps us bring you more mysteries and revelations. Stay tuned, because next time, we'll be diving into a new investigation, one that will keep you on the edge of your seat. You won't want to miss it.